Welcome, everyone. Good morning to Sports Shorts Daily, presented by LeBears Casino. Ronnie Rance alongside Tommy Christ and TK joining us from Court Street Cafe. I am at an undisclosed location presented by the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. A big day on Wednesday for the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. Two things are going to happen on Wednesday. One, we're going to launch at noon the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame Gridiron Kickoff Auction, our annual auction this time of the year to raise money for the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame Foundation. Going to be literally like 300 auction items on there. So go check it out and help support the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. Buy something. You got things as low as 20, $30 all the way up to, thousands of dollars and really cool stuff. So that's on Wednesday. And then on Wednesday before that, around 10 a.m. or so, the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame is going to announce the 2026 Hall of Fame class. The Hall of Fame class will be announced Wednesday morning. We already know Todd McClure is in it, former Central High, LSU, Atlanta Falcons great. But you'll find out who the other ones are. And that'll be really cool. I think you're going to know a lot of the names. There's some of the greats in Louisiana, and looking forward to telling the world about that Hall of Fame class on Wednesday. So check that out at lasportshall.com or give a follow on all the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. All right, TK, the news and notes. First off, let's start with the Saints. Let's start with the Tigers. LSU won a game, but it felt like a loss, didn't it? They were a 36-37 point favorite over Louisiana Tech. They end up winning by 16. They struggled to run the football, but most importantly, two major injuries came out of that game. Yeah, you got to win, and you can say, hey, it was a letdown game after Clemson on the road. Looked like Clemson had the same letdown. They were trailing 16-3 to Troy and took a kind of a miraculous second half. They got a fortunate bounce off of an interception off the back of a player. They win 27-16 over Troy to survive and advance. So both teams kind of look like they maybe had a little hangover effect from putting all their eggs in that opening game basket for the last 10 months. But for LSU, they come out of it two players that are injured, and we don't necessarily know for how long they'll be out, but they will be out this Saturday more than likely against Florida. And that is Trey'Dez Green, the outstanding tight end from Zachary, the former basketball player, 6'7", and then Braylon Moore, the one of the jewels in the signing class of the transfer portal, the anchor for their offensive line, the center, who was the SEC Player of the Week on the offensive line in the first game against Clemson. And he's out. He goes out in the first play of the game against Louisiana Tech, and he's in a boot with a high ankle sprain. Trey'Dez Green has an undisclosed knee injury. We hear through sources that are being reported that the Green injury is more severe than the Moore injury. So that Green looks like he is going to miss multiple weeks of time, whereas Braylon Moore with a high ankle sprain, offensive lineman, who knows? That could be one game, that could be 4 games. Don't know, or he could just be playing this week and not miss any, but just playing not 100%. So TK, those are two guys that were very special and important to that offense.
They really were. I mean, Moore went down after the first snap, and like you said, he was the player of the week in the conference. Nowadays when there's 16 teams in the conference, you're the player of the week in the conference. You're graded pretty high. And then they only targeted Trey'Dez Green once. That was that jump ball thing, like right near the goal line, off to the right flat. And it wasn't a completion. But this is two guys, certainly more in the line. You got a few more wide receivers in the wide receiver room than you have centers in the center room. Although Chester slid over from guard and did a decent job. But, couldn't run the ball. Now Kelly talks about how Tech plays that 3-3 defense, and it can be difficult to figure it out and blocking schemes and where they come and where they not. But still, I mean, it's Louisiana Tech. LSU, I'm not saying they had to cover and win by 37.5, but they should have looked better offensively, and they did not. Defense was fine. Special teams, for the most part, was fine. But a lot of work to do. And then you get a limping Florida Gator team coming in this week. But the Moore and Green story, Kelly meets with the media today at noon. He's not going to say a lot. Maybe, he may declare both out or one of the two out for this week. Because they got to file an official report this week That's a new SEC rule, and this is an SEC versus SEC game. So, you'll get some information later in the week if we don't get it earlier. But it's key. It's important stuff.
Um, it's amazing, Tommy, because at the press conference that Brian Kelly had after the game, you could tell he was frustrated. He felt, it was almost as if a fan had done the press conference, right? I mean, he was frustrated that his team didn't perform better. He put it on him and his coach's back, which is what you're supposed to do, and say, hey, we got to coach better. Yeah, we got to play better. We got to coach better. We blame the coaches first for them. It's funny because we talk so much about, oh man, they're 1-0 and they're focused, and we see the little snapshot where they cover up the signage and they're going to be 1-0 in the second week against Louisiana Tech, and all they're worried about is Louisiana Tech, and the players are saying all the right things at the press conference. But the reality is that I think it probably felt more like a coronation of, hey, nice job, guys, on the Clemson win. Out there in the stadium, everybody's been patting you on the back all week. You've been hearing about how you're a national champion contender. Yeah, we're focused on Louisiana Tech. Yeah, we're focused on Louisiana Tech. They weren't. And Gordy Rush, who of course played college football at LSU, Purdue, and LSU, he talked about it all the time when he and I used to do the pre and post game show for Eagle 98.1 for years. Was look, no matter how much you talk about it, no matter how much you prepare for it, there's going to be a game or two every year where there's a letdown. And usually they're the games that aren't against the big time teams, right? It's the morning starts or the non-conference games, and you look lackluster. And that was it against Louisiana Tech. Hopefully that's the only one they have. But now you take on a Florida team, and we'll talk more about the game later in the week. But you're talking about a Florida team that beat you last year, and is really got something to play for because their schedule is the hardest in the country for the second year in a row. They got upset at home against South Florida, against a good South Florida team. But this is a Florida team that had won 5 in a row, and as much as people have had Billy Napier fired many times, including myself, thought he would never make it last year past, the season, and he did. Uh, that's a guy who obviously, no matter how down they are, can get his team to play well. And so you got a team in LSU that's limping in a little bit with potentially their starting center out, their leader of their offense, without their number one red zone target. Who, yeah, he had a touchdown catch against Clemson. He also had a pass interference call against Clemson, and you're going to be a little bit hampered, a little bit shook. You're not feeling ultra as confident, and you got a Florida team who's backs against the wall a little bit. So LSU's a touchdown favorite against the Gators, but I almost feel, to me, Tommy, like it's a coin flip game.
Well, 9.5 actually. It opened 6.5,
No,
but then
it's up to 9.5. Okay, I
yeah, that
saw it
wasn't the
at six and a
official.
half.
Yeah, I saw
I
that
saw,
too. But then now it's everywhere you look, it's 9.5
okay.
across the board. But yeah, LSU really got to refocus. You're right. That's that one game they just mentally weren't there like they needed to be, but they did win the game. The bottom line is they got a W and they won the game. And I'm sure there's some good things that happened in the game in the eyes of the coaching staff. And then there's a lot to work on because Florida, you're going to be a better team than what Louisiana Tech was, I think. I don't know. Their
I,
schedule
I tell
is
you,
tough.
I tell you, one, if my gut tells me right now that if I were to bet that game, I would buy the hook and I would take Florida plus 10. And but I also, if you don't like to buy points and stuff, because I know a lot of people don't like to do that. And TK's a value guy, hates to do that. But I also like the under. I think the under is what, 51 or something like that.
It
Um,
is
and so
50 and a half.
yeah, so I mean, I like the under because I think both teams have not impressed offensively through the first 2 weeks, and Florida, by for sure, has not impressed against South Florida. I mean, they scored what, 16 points or 15 points or whatever it was. So I definitely think and then in this game again, LSU missing some weapons. They're on offense. And this is just like the Clemson game, one of those games where, um, it doesn't matter about style points. You're just going to get out there with the win. And the LSU defense is, playing fantastic through the first 2 weeks. So at home, all that 6:30 game, gold game. I like the under, TK.
Yeah, I would agree with that here early in the week, and we'll see how that rolls forward. I mean, I heard it coming in this morning. The Florida schedule the next 5 weeks, they could be
Oh,
1-6.
they
They could
literally
be
could.
actually 1-6 in the coming weeks, but LSU can't worry about that. They don't worry about beating them on Saturday night and doing what they got to do. Like you said, Florida beat them last year down there in Gainesville in a game. A lot of people didn't think Florida would win that game, but they did. And it kind of sparked Florida into a good finish of their season. So it's an important game. It's on ABC TV, national. All eyes in the country will be able to check that out. And should be a packed house at Tiger Stadium. Need some of that weather we got this morning. It's pretty cool. Have you stepped outside yet, Ron?
Yeah.
And then I thought of this too, Ronnie. I thought about you. I really did. The Rougarou season's over when we haven't had rain for like a week and a half, and there's no rain scheduled for this week. I said that must. I tell you what, they need some rain. You need to schedule a fall Rougarou inter squad game, even if it's like 6-on-6. Close right field like we did as little kids in the old day. But anyway, we need some good weather Saturday for LSU, Florida.
um, let's move on to the Saints, Tommy. The
Do
New
we have
Orleans.
to, Ronnie? Do we have to?
Listen, I got to be honest with you. The Saints played decent.
They had a shot at the end.
They on paper they kind of outplayed the Cardinals a little bit on paper. If you go by yards and first downs and things like that, they didn't have a turnover. Uh, it, just they just don't have enough juice. They just don't. Groupie misses a chip shot field goal. Like a professional kicker, Tommy should never miss a field goal under 40 in a dome on their home field, and that's what Groupie did. And he put them behind the 8 ball. You get down 10 instead of 13, and I mean down 7, and it just, I mean, like you can't. The New Orleans Saints can't miss field goals. You know they
No,
they
never.
they have to tack on points. Groupie's got to be. He's got to have the best year of his career this year because they're going to kick a lot of field goals, and he can't. They can't not have confidence in him, and he's got to make them. And that was a killer in a game like that. That was a killer for him to miss that field goal. But I thought Rattler played okay. I thought the Saints, they ran the football. Maybe they got away from running it a little too much. I don't. They had a chance, and they just don't. They don't have the playmakers unlike Buffalo and the Ravens. They don't have the playmakers.
Well, I thought Kamara ran well, ran hard, a lot of yards after contact. I thought Kamara really came with some juice, okay? And I thought he did good. Cam Jordan, a couple of sacks, a pass that he
Saints had
tipped at the
5 sacks.
Yeah,
Tommy, they had 5 sacks, no turnovers. Right? I don't think they had a
yeah.
turnover.
Neither
No
team did.
no turnovers, 5 sacks, and you're at home and and you outgain your opponent and you lose the game. I mean,
Yeah, no, that was one of them. And they had a shot at the end. If they can get a touchdown, extra point, go to overtime. Who the heck knows what happens? So you had a shot in the fourth quarter, which I'm not so sure I thought they would have. Now the other thing, Ronnie, the Dan Patrick show. I'm a big fan. They opened the show this morning talking about how bad the Saints uniforms were, and I think you had the perfect description Saturday on Sports Shorts Radio when you said it looked like you had a nice gold jersey and you hung it on the laundry line and you forgot it. Okay. Well, like a month later, you went, wait a minute, that jersey's still in the backyard. And it's faded into almost nothing. I mean, now we'll say they said on the Patrick show, the Saints consider one of the best uniforms in the NFL by, a lot of people that get into that. And I also not only was the gold jersey awful, but no stripe or anything on the pants.
right.
Ronnie, they had Jefferson Parish playground teams that had better uniforms this weekend than the Saints. I hope they never wear them things again. I mean that just. I'm not saying that's why they lost. It's certainly not, but that just was tough to look at, especially for lifelong Saints fans like you and I, who you always had some pride in that black and gold, and to come out with that stuff. I mean, that somebody made a bad choice in the marketing department. or they got it looks like the little league team, Ronnie, that found that sale on those on the uniforms because the store couldn't move them, and they said, "Well, we'll sell you these for three for the price of one." So they bought them. I mean, that's what it looked like. It was terrible, but they did play better football than maybe some people thought. Now they got the 49ers coming to town, another home game, and let's see if they can do better with the
It
uniforms.
felt weird for me, Tommy, because I found my and look, it is what it is. When you gamble, you got to go with the bet. But I had taken the under on the game, which I think was 51 and a half, maybe, or something like that, with the over under on. No, I'm sorry, 42 and a half, I think was the over
Yeah.
under on the Saints game, 42 and a half. And I had taken the under on the game, and of course, it was 20-13, so it's sitting there at 33. If the Saints score, it's 40 points, and obviously, most likely, someone's going to kick a field goal or score a touchdown in overtime. It could possibly 10 minutes go tied, but most likely you're going to lose that bet. It's going to go to overtime. You're going to lose that bet. So I'm sitting there, kind of hoping the Saints don't score, and I've got over under 5.5 wins on the season. Like I took the under, for a good chunk on the Saints for the season. So the Cardinals game was kind of one of those coin flip games because it's the first game of the year. You're at home. Yeah, they're almost a touchdown underdog, but Saints could win that game. Cardinals aren't great. And so that was one of those games that could really burn you on that 5.5. And so as it turns out, I was a winner, chicken dinner. But it was weird to kind of be like, kind of want them to score, but I kind of don't. like, uh, but anyway, let's move
That's
on.
what
We'll
happens.
get.
That's what happens when you gamble. When you do that, you
I
you,
don't
you
like to
take
gamble
you take
against.
strange
I,
methods.
I never like to gamble against the Saints, against UL. I mean, against LSU or UL for that matter. But in this case, I just felt like the Saints are going to be so bad this year. Like I really believe they're only going to win 3 or 4 games. And one of those games I thought they were going to win was going to be the Jets on the road in December, and the Jets looked pretty darn good on offense with Justin Fields and scored 30 something points against the Steelers. So that Jets game may not look like we thought it would. So I feel pretty good about my bet after the Saints found a way to not beat the Cardinals. Let's move on. Talk a little bit real quick this week. Big game in New Orleans. Tulane hosted Duke. People think, well, why would Tulane versus Duke be a big game? Well, Tulane found a way to survive and advance against South Alabama. They didn't cover. They were on the road. They won by two against Major Applewhite's team. Duke's 2-0. No, I believe 2-0. Are they 2-0? Is Duke
One
2-0?
and one.
1-1. That's right. Um, but the storyline is that Tulane, who had such a really good team last year, developed this young freshman quarterback. Think, okay, our future's bright with him. Nope. He Jets signs a multi-million-dollar deal with Duke. And so now their former quarterback's going to come back to take on Green Wave.
Yeah, Darian Mensah, a California kid who really shined for Tulane. And Tulane, wants to be in the 12-team playoff. And if they run the table, they're going to have a great shot for that. They hung on against South Alabama on the road the other night. So, yeah, I think there'll be some juice for Tulane with Mensah coming back as the Duke quarterback at Yulman Stadium. Hopefully they can fill that thing up or come close. And that'll be something we'll talk about later in the week. Ronnie, I know you were in at Our Lady of Lourdes Stadium in Lafayette for the Raging Cajuns victory over the.
Cajun Field at Our Lady of the Lord Stadium.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you were there for the victory over the McNeese Cowboys. First off, your thoughts on the stadium and the $65 million renovation.
Thought the stadium was great. I think they had I don't know 20. They announced I want to say somewhere around 23 to 26,000 fans at the game, which is a really good crowd for the Raging Cajuns. Stadium looks great. Tommy, my brother Gus has a suite over there with AMG, and I mean, they really did a first class job. Atmosphere was awesome. Field looked good. They have the LED lights that can light up red. That they'll do that a few times, during the game for certain moments and songs or whatever during commercial break. UL ended up winning 33-10, but it wasn't that close. It was 17-10 till late in the fourth quarter, and then some crazy things happened, and UL was able to distance themselves a little bit. My takeaway is that the Raging Cajuns are really going to miss Walker Howard. This was supposed to be the Walker Howard year, the former 4 5 star quarterback out of St. Thomas More, LSU, Ole Miss, and then now UL. He was supposed to be the guy. They were going to, expected to have a good season, win 8 9 games. And then he's out for the year with an oblique injury. His oblique tore off the bone, and so they had to staple it back and stitch it back and do all the things, have surgery. So that's a very painful, serious injury, and so he'll be missing the rest of the year. Um, with that becomes Beal, the young man from Baton Rouge, a quarterback who won 3 state championships at Catholic High. He's a redshirt freshman. He made his first start of his career against McNeese. To me, doesn't look great. I think that it's probably one of those situations where he's playing too soon. Um, uh, I it's their offense is going to really struggle against Sun Belt Conference competition. And it's going to really struggle this week on the road against Missouri. So I like Missouri. I think Missouri's like a 24-point favorite, maybe, or something like that. I kind of like them, Missouri. I just don't see how the Raging Cajuns are going to score on the road against an SEC team. It was, the Cajuns were able to run the football against McNeese and ran it pretty effectively, especially in the second half when you wore down on, a one double A opponent. But uh, they can't really throw the football, and that's not going to work on the road in the SEC or against some of the better teams in the Sun Belt Conference. So I don't. I feel my prediction. I hate saying it, is that the Raging Cajuns are going to have a losing season this year. I think the Walker Howard injury is that impactful. They missed a couple of field goals as well, which was weird. And so I would, if I had to gun to the head betting man, I think 5 wins, 4 or 5 wins, something like that is where they land. I think the injury is that significant on offense.
Yeah, it's a very bad break for the Raging Cages, no question. Ronnie, this morning I was ripping through all the college football schedule this coming week. There's a lot of huge point spreads. I'm talking 25 points and up. There's very few key matchups. Georgia at Tennessee is a good matchup. A&M and Notre Dame. Vandy, South Carolina, two 2-0 teams that have high hopes. Other than that, everything's 25, 35.
South Florida at Miami is a good one.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, there's
Both
a
teams ranked.
handful.
Yeah, can South Florida will have played 3 ranked teams in a row. Obviously, they're 2-0. They beat Boise State and Florida on the road. There's a lot put on, with Beck at quarterback at Miami, and the win against Notre Dame and all that. There's a lot of juice behind the Hurricanes. Can South Florida get up for 3 games in a row and upset somebody? That would be interesting to watch. Um, we'll talk plenty more about college football later this week. I want to get your takeaway, Tommy. Week 1 of the NFL season, and already they probably had the best game of the year, and that was the Ravens at Buffalo. I mean, there's not going to be a better one than that. First time ever that a team was down 15 with under 4 to go in opening, in the opening game of the year of the season, and came back to win. And I think only the fourth or fifth time ever, Tommy, that had happened. It's like the fourth or fifth time ever that a team was trailing by 14 with under 4 minutes to play and won the game. But it's the first time it ever happened in the opening game of the year.
Well, and it's only the third time in NFL history that a team scored 40 or more on the road and lost.
Right.
Okay, I mean 40 or more on the road and lost. And then Chris Collinsworth's getting torched today. Because he was gushing all over the Ravens, best team in football, going to be Super Bowl champs, could be undefeated, and then the Bills come back and beat him. And I do want to. Mike Tirico, I think, is a great announcer. I really enjoy listening to Mike Tirico. Just the way he delivers and what he says, I think is wonderful. But anyway, I don't know if you can top that as the game of the year, which was last night. 41-40 final. A lot of the Buffalo fans even left, and Josh Allen talked about that after the game. He said, "Hey, it's a 60-minute game. Anything can happen. It's rare and truly an exception, as we see from the stats. But hey." Who knows? That's two teams that could very well be playing each other in January. No doubt about that. That's two of the best teams in the NFL. And then I saw some posts and comments like, how many light years away are the Saints and Cardinals and about 15 other NFL teams from being what the Ravens and the Bills are? I mean, Derrick Henry is the best running back in football. bar none. Okay, Jackson only attempted like 19 passes last night. When you got Henry, and then when they spell him, them other guys aren't bad. It was a heck of a two heavyweights, if you want to use the pun, in the NFL. And those two teams very well could play again in January in a playoff situation.
Derrick Henry's a beast. I mean,
Oh,
you had 3, 4 MVPs playing in that game, and then of course Henry's fumble with 3 minutes to go is really the difference in that game. He holds on to that football. Chances are we're not talking
what
about what we are.
One last thing on the NFL. I watched a lot of the Packers and Lions yesterday. How about former LSU Tiger and linebacker Kelvin Shepard, defensive coordinator for the Lions? He bounced around 5 or 6 NFL teams after a really good career at LSU. And the Lions lost both their coordinators. That's well documented. Kelvin Shepard getting a shot there as the defensive coordinator. They didn't beat the Packers, but and I knew he had got that promotion, but he got talked a lot. These coordinators get talked about a lot in these games now, way more than they did 10 years ago. Of course, they're making the money collegiately and in the NFL. So tip of the hat to Kelvin Shepard.
Um, no, I 100% agree with you, TK. I mean, it's incredible when you watch that Ravens Bills game and think that's the same league that the Saints play in because it doesn't look the same.
It's kind of
One
like kind of like being in Louisiana, watch a 5A matchup of two big time teams and a 1A team the 1A team's not beating the 5A team. Well, the Saints and the Cardinals are 1A, Bills and the Ravens or 5A. And of course, there are other teams like the Saints and Cardinals who aren't anywhere close to them, too.
How about this statistic about Derrick Henry, the running back for the Titans, the great Alabama Crimson Tide running back? In high school, Tommy, he rushed for he in the he's this is his ninth season, I believe, in the NFL. He's rushed for almost 12,000 yards in his whole career in the NFL already. He's rushed for over 2,000 a couple times. He does not he at this point in his career, he doesn't have more rushing yards than he did in high school. He had over 12,000 rushing yards in high school, rushed for over 4,000 his senior year, and had 150 something touchdowns. I mean, maybe
What
the greatest running back ever in the history of high school football. I think it's fair to say it's him.
He's slightly better than Buford Jordan. Now, come on now. Buford was pretty good back in the day. But anyway, no, the other thing, I remember when Derrick Henry was a freshman at Alabama. I want to say it was a Sugar Bowl game against Utah. And he was the running back that night because some other guys didn't play or whatever. And they're big, fast, strong. And of course, he's bigger now. But people talked about, I mean, how can you be that big and fast and strong in college? And then great career at Bama and so long with the Titans and now with the Ravens. I mean, if you're the defensive coordinator, we keep talking about coordinators going against the Ravens, you better know if Henry's in the huddle before when they break.
One last thing before we go, and TK tells us about Court Street Cafe. Rest in peace, Bill Bumgarner, the longtime sports writer down in the New Orleans area from Lafayette, went to USL and all that. Bummer, as he was called, used to cover the Saints back in the day and all that. Bill Bumgarner wrote for the Times-Picayune for a long time. He passed away, had a heart attack yesterday, and so condolences to he and his family. Did your paths cross with Bummer, TK?
Yeah, one year when I was we used to sit in the press box for the Saints games, we sat next to each other. One season, our seats were assigned to each other. Outstanding sports writer, a legend. It was real. He covered the Saints, but he liked prep sports in New Orleans, like many people do, and loved Tulane sports. And he was just one of them old time sports writers that had a way of looking at some things that kind of made you go, I didn't think of it that way. It wasn't just 20-13 was the final score when Bill wrote the story. So I was unaware of that till you just said it. But brief crossing of paths, but certainly I read many a story he wrote in my life.
Um, Bummer has a tie to the Baton Rouge Rougarou, loose tie. Here's the
Well,
tie, and that is that Lori Lyons, who's the award-winning sports writer for the Rougarou, um, Bill Bumgarner, introduced Lori Lyons to her husband Marty. So
Okay. Long
yeah,
time
so
baseball coach. Yeah.
yeah. So there you
Okay.
go. There's a connection
That's
to the
cool.
Root Group. All right, TK, tell us about Court Street Cafe.
Well, 7 days a week, breakfast, lunch, dinner, Saturday night, steak night, Sunday, the famous brunch. Big crowd here yesterday. Jason and the staff do a super job. Uh, Facebook, Instagram with the lunch specials. Today it's red beans and rice. Dinner specials, dinner of the week. Got drink specials, daiquiri machines, cold beer on your way home, full service bar. It's all at Court Street Cafe in Port Allen. We've been coming over here for a long time. We hope you've stopped by. If not, make a point. Get it on the calendar for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and come to Court Street Cafe in Port Allen. Just a couple of minutes over the Mississippi River Bridge. Plenty of parking available. You'll be glad you did. All right, Sports Shorts Daily returns Wednesday morning where we'll be at Tremonti's Meat and Seafood. Until then, have a great Monday, everybody. I'm Tommy Christ, Sam. Talk to you soon.